The rain came down like judgment that Saturday evening, turning the asphalt outside Murphy's diner into a black mirror that reflected nothing but gray sky and neon signs. Reaper sat astride his Harley, engine ticking as it cooled, watching the water stream off his leather vest. Behind him, 7 other bikes stood in formation, his brothers, his club, the Iron Cross MC. They'd ridden 200 miles through back roads and forgotten towns, chasing nothing but the hum of engines and the promise of strong coffee. Today marked 15 years. 15 years since Emily. His daughter would have been 22 now, but she'd never made it past 7. A drunk driver on a rainy Tuesday. He'd been working late that night, hadn't been there to walk her home from school. Some wounds don't heal, they just get quieter. Reap. That was Gunner, his VP, a wall of tattoos and scar tissue. You coming in, or you gonna sit out here drowning? Reaper didn't answer. Something had caught his eye, a small shape moving through the rain about 50 yards down the street. At first, he thought it was a dog, the way it hunched against the weather. But then it straightened, and he saw it was a child. A little girl in a soaked pink jacket, no umbrella, walking with the slow determination of someone who'd been walking for a very long time. The club went quiet behind him. They'd seen her too. She was moving toward them now, and Reaper felt his chest tighten. Her sneakers were caked in mud. Her dark hair hung in wet ropes around a face too pale, too thin. But it was her eyes that made him forget how to breathe, swollen, red-rimmed, the kind of eyes that came from hours of crying alone. She stopped 10 feet away, clutching something to her chest. A photograph, he realized, crumpled and wet. The parking lot seemed to hold its breath. Rain hammered everything except the space between them. Sir. Her voice was barely a whisper, nearly lost in the storm. She took one step closer, then another. She was trembling, from cold or fear or something deeper, he couldn't tell. You look like someone who listens. Reaper felt the words hit him like a fist. Behind his ribs, something he'd kept locked for 15 years started to crack. He climbed off his bike slowly, careful not to spook her, and took a knee in the rain-soaked parking lot. Water ran down his face, into his beard, but he didn't care. I'm listening, he said, and his voice came out rougher than he meant it to. She swallowed hard, trying to be brave, trying to hold together whatever courage had brought her here. Her small fingers tightened on the photograph. I came to you, she said, and her voice broke on the words, because nobody else believes me. She held out the photograph with both hands, like an offering, like a plea. Reaper took it gently. The image was water-damaged, but he could make out a man in his 40s, clean-cut, smiling, the kind of face that belonged in a church directory or a company newsletter. Nothing remarkable, nothing that screamed danger. But the way she was looking at him, this little girl who'd walked God knows how far through a storm to find someone, anyone, who might help, told him everything he needed to know. He looked up at his brothers, saw the same recognition in their eyes. Every man there had a daughter, a sister, a niece. Every man there knew what it meant when a child looked at you like that. When a child came to you because the world had failed her. What's your name, sweetheart? Reaper asked softly. Lily, she whispered. My name is Lily. Behind him, he heard Gunner's boots hit the pavement. Then Mouse's. Then wrenches. One by one, his brothers dismounted, forming a wall of leather and steel around this shivering child who'd walked through hell to find them. Reaper stood slowly, keeping his eyes on hers. Lily, he said, you're not alone anymore. Inside Murphy's diner, the fluorescent lights felt harsh after the gray rain. Someone, Torch, the youngest of them, draped his club jacket around Lily's shoulders. It swallowed her completely, falling past her knees, but she pulled it tight like armor. The dinner crowd had gone quiet. Families in booths, truckers at the counter, everyone watching this strange procession of bikers and one very small girl. Murphy himself, a Vietnam vet who'd seen his share of trouble, simply nodded and pointed to the big corner booth. He knew better than to ask questions yet. Reaper slid into the booth across from Lily. The rest of the club created a perimeter, some sitting, some standing, all watching, protecting. She was their responsibility now, whether she knew it or not. You want something hot to drink? Reaper asked. Hot chocolate? Tea? Lily nodded. Hot chocolate, please. Murphy brought it himself, with extra marshmallows, and didn't put it on any tab. Lily wrapped both hands around the mug, and Reaper watched the color slowly return to her fingertips. Lily, he said gently, I need you to tell me what's happening. Can you do that? She stared into her hot chocolate. Steam rose between them like a thin veil. When she finally spoke, her voice was so small he had to lean forward to hear. That man in the picture, his name is David. He's my mom's boyfriend. He moved in 6 months ago. She paused, swallowing hard. At first he was nice. He brought me toys. He took us to the movies. Reaper felt his jaw tighten, but he kept his face neutral. Patient. She needed to tell this her way. But then he started yelling. At my mom mostly. About stupid things, dinner being late, the TV being too loud, her working too much. And then, she stopped, tears welling up again. And then he started hurting her. I saw the bruises. On her arms. Her back. She tried to hide them, but I saw. Behind Reaper, Gunner's fist clenched on the table. Nobody spoke. I told my teacher, Lily continued, her voice growing stronger with something like anger. I told her David was mean, that he hurt my mom. She said I needed proof. I told the school counselor. She called my mom, and my mom said everything was fine because David was right there listening. I even tried to tell Mrs. Henderson next door, but she said it wasn't her business. So nobody helped, Reaper said quietly. Nobody believed me. Lily looked up at him with those devastating eyes. Because David is nice to everyone else. He coaches Little League. He volunteers at church. Everyone thinks he's perfect. But at home, she trailed off, shaking her head. At home, he's different. Reaper felt something old and familiar rising in his chest. The rage that came from knowing evil wore a smile. The helplessness of being too late. But this time, he wasn't too late. This time, a little girl had found him in the rain and given him a second chance. Where's your mom now? He asked. At home. He doesn't let her go anywhere without him anymore. Today, he went to visit his brother. He'll be gone until tomorrow morning. That's the only reason I could leave. I walked for. She paused, thinking. I don't know. A long time. I saw your motorcycles from the highway overpass, and I knew. I knew you would listen. Reaper's vision blurred for a second. He saw Emily in this girl, the same age, the same desperate bravery. But this time, he could do something. This time, he could be there. Lily, he said, his voice thick, you did the right thing. You did everything right. And I promise you, we're going to help your mom. We're going to make sure you're both safe. You believe me? The hope in her voice nearly broke him. Every word. Gunner leaned in. Reap, we need to call this in. Police, social services. Already on it, said Wrench, phone to his ear. Talking to a buddy at county sheriff's. He's sending someone. But Lily grabbed Reaper's hand across the table. Her small fingers were cold, desperate. Please don't leave me. When the police came before, David convinced them my mom was clumsy. That I was making things up for attention. He's good at lying. He's so good. Reaper covered her hand with both of his. I'm not going anywhere. And when we talk to the police this time, they're going to see things differently. Why? She whispered. He looked around at his brothers, 7 men who'd lived hard lives, made mistakes, wore their own scars. Men who'd been written off by polite society as thugs and criminals. Men who understood better than anyone what it meant to be judged by appearance rather than truth. Because this time, Reaper said, you've got witnesses. You've got protection. You've got us. The rain had softened to a drizzle by the time they rolled out, but the sky remained dark, a bruised purple that promised the storm wasn't quite finished. Lily rode with Reaper, tucked in front of him, wearing a borrowed helmet that was 3 sizes too big. She gripped the handlebars with white knuckles, but she didn't cry. Not anymore. Behind them, the club rode in formation. Then came the sheriff's deputy, a woman named Carson who had daughters of her own and a reputation for not looking the other way. And behind her, a social worker in a Toyota sedan, headlights cutting through the gathering dusk. They were a procession, a parade of purpose moving through the wet streets toward Lily's neighborhood. That's my street, Lily called out over the engine noise. Maple Street, the blue house at the end. Reaper felt her stiffen as they turned the corner. This was her world, her neighborhood, the place that had failed to protect her. He could feel her fear like a physical thing. Maple Street was lined with tidy homes, manicured lawns, basketball hoops in driveways. The kind of place where people believed bad things happened somewhere else, to someone else. Reaper had learned long ago that evil didn't just lurk in dark alleys. It sat at dinner tables, attended PTA meetings, hid behind closed doors in houses exactly like these. The rumble of 8 Harleys shattered the suburban silence like a gunshot. Curtains twitched. Faces appeared in windows. A man mowing his lawn stopped mid-push, staring. They parked in front of the blue house, a modest ranch with flower beds and an American flag by the door. Perfect. Untouchable. Exactly the kind of place where screams went unheard because people didn't want to hear them. Lily climbed off the bike slowly. Her hands were shaking again. "You don't have to go in yet," Reaper said. "We can talk out here first." But Lily shook her head. "My mom's in there. She doesn't know I left. She's probably scared." Deputy Carson approached, her face kind but professional. "Lily, I'm going to knock on the door and speak with your mother. These gentlemen are going to wait right here. Is that all right?" Lily looked up at Reaper. He nodded. "We're not going anywhere." The door opened before Carson could knock. A woman appeared, mid-30s, thin, with Lily's same dark hair and delicate features. Her eyes went wide when she saw the motorcycles, the deputy, her daughter. "Lily? Oh my God, Lily!" She rushed forward, pulling her daughter into her arms. "Where have you been? I've been calling everyone. I thought." She broke off, holding Lily at arm's length, checking for injuries. Then she saw the bruises on her daughter's arms from where she'd gripped the handlebars, and her face crumpled. "What happened?" "Ma'am," Deputy Carson said gently, "I think we need to talk. Inside, if that's all right." "I don't understand. Is Lily in trouble? Did she do something?" "No, ma'am." Carson's voice was firm. "But we've received some concerning information, and I need to ask you some questions." Lily's mother, her name was Sarah, Reaper learned later, looked around at the assembled bikers with confusion and fear. Her gaze landed on Reaper, and he saw her tense, saw her pull Lily closer. He understood. He was 6'4" of leather and scars, the kind of man mothers taught their daughters to avoid. But then Lily said, "It's okay, Mom." He listened to me. They all did. Something in Sarah's face changed. Shifted. Reaper saw the exact moment she understood, when she realized her daughter had run to strangers because the people who were supposed to help hadn't. "You told them," Sarah whispered. "I had to, Mom. I had to tell someone." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. She looked at Deputy Carson, then at Reaper, then back at her daughter. "I wanted to protect you. I thought if I could just keep things calm, manage his moods, I thought it would get better." "It never gets better," Carson said quietly. "Not without help. Let's go inside and talk." They moved toward the house. Sarah, Lily, the deputy, the social worker. Reaper started to turn back to his bike, but Lily caught his hand. "Please," she said. "Don't go. Not yet." So he followed them in, this giant of a man ducking through a doorway into a living room that smelled like vanilla candles and fear. The house was immaculate, not a thing out of place, which told him everything. This was the home of someone who'd learned that mess brought consequences. They sat, Sarah on the couch, Lily beside her, Carson and the social worker in chairs. Reaper stood by the door, arms crossed, saying nothing, just present, just witness. "Mrs. Bennett," Carson began, "your daughter came to these men today with some serious allegations against David Morrison. I need you to tell me, in your own words, what's been happening in this house." Sarah's hands twisted in her lap. She glanced at the door, as if expecting David to walk through it any second. "He's not a bad man. He gets stressed. His job, the bills." "Mom." Lily's voice was small but steady. "Tell the truth. Please." Sarah closed her eyes. When she opened them again, tears streamed down her face. And then, finally, she told the truth. She told about the first time he'd grabbed her arm hard enough to bruise. How he'd apologized, brought flowers, promised it would never happen again. About how it did happen again and again, each time followed by apologies and gifts and promises. About how he'd isolated her from friends, family, anyone who might notice or care. About how he'd convinced her that if she just tried harder, loved him better, kept the house cleaner, cooked his favorite meals, it would stop. About how she'd stayed because she had nowhere else to go, no money of her own, and was terrified he'd fight for custody of Lily out of spite. About how she'd taught Lily to be quiet, to stay in her room when Daddy David was in a mood, to pretend everything was fine at school. About how, despite all of that, her daughter had been braver than she was. When Sarah finished, the room was silent except for the sound of rain starting up again outside. Deputy Carson set down her notepad. "Mrs. Bennett, I'm going to be honest with you. What you've described is domestic violence. It's a crime, and I need to document this officially. That means photographs of any injuries, a detailed statement, and a safety plan moving forward. He'll know I talked. When he comes back, Carson interrupted, he's going to find an emergency protective order and a criminal investigation. You and Lily won't be here. We'll get you somewhere safe tonight. I don't have anywhere. Yes, you do. The social worker spoke up for the first time, a middle-aged woman with kind eyes and a no-nonsense voice. We have emergency housing. We have resources. You're not alone in this, Sarah. Sarah looked at her daughter, really looked at her, and Reaper saw the moment a mother's fear transformed into something harder, something that looked like rage. He hurt my baby, Sarah whispered. Not physically, but he hurt her, made her afraid in her own home, made her think nobody would help. Her voice grew stronger. What do I need to do? First, Carson said, tell me everything. Then we're going to document it. And then we're going to make sure you and Lily are safe. They worked for the next hour. Carson took photos, filled out reports, made calls. The social worker explained resources, shelters, counseling, legal aid, restraining orders. Sarah signed papers with shaking hands, her jaw set with new determination. Through it all, Lily sat beside her mother, holding her hand, no longer the scared child who'd walked through rain to find help. She was something else now, a survivor, a fighter, a girl who'd saved her mother's life. Reaper watched from his position by the door, saying nothing, his presence a wall between this family and whatever might come through that door. His brothers waited outside, a second wall, engines idling softly in the rain. Mrs. Bennett, Carson finally said, I'm going to arrange for a unit to drive by regularly tonight and tomorrow. Given that David's not expected back until morning, we have time to get you settled somewhere safe and serve him with papers. But I need to know, will you press charges? Sarah looked at Lily. Then she looked at Reaper, this stranger who'd believed her daughter when no one else would. Yes, she said. I'll press charges. Carson nodded. Good. Now let's pack some things for you and Lily. You'll come with us. As they moved to gather belongings, Lily approached Reaper. She looked up at him with those eyes that had seen too much for 7 years. Thank you, she said simply. Reaper knelt down to her level. The words he wanted to say stuck in his throat. Words about his own daughter, about second chances, about how she'd given him a gift he didn't know he needed. But those weren't words for a 7-year-old. You saved your mom today, he said instead. You were braver than anyone I've ever met. You remember that, okay? I was scared, she admitted. Being brave doesn't mean you're not scared. It means you do the right thing even when you are. He pulled a card from his wallet, the Iron Cross MC Clubhouse number, the only contact information he had. You or your mom ever need anything, you call that number. Day or night. Someone will answer. She took the card carefully, like it was made of gold. Will I see you again? If you want to, he said. His voice cracked slightly. I'd like that. Lily threw her arms around his neck. Reaper, this man of leather and steel and carefully constructed walls, wrapped his arms around her and let himself feel something he'd thought was dead. Hope. 2 years later, Reaper stood in the back of Franklin Elementary School's auditorium, watching the stage. The spring play, some adaptation of fairy tales, was in full swing, with kids in costumes stumbling through lines and parents recording every second on their phones. He didn't belong here, in this room full of families and PTA volunteers and bake sale signs. His leather vest drew stares. His tattoos made Mother's edge away slightly. But when the third graders took the stage, and Lily stepped forward in a princess costume 3 sizes too big, everything else disappeared. She'd grown. 2 years of safety, of therapy, of a mother who'd found her strength had transformed the terrified child into something radiant. She still had those eyes. They'd always carry shadows, but now they sparkled too. She delivered her lines clearly, confidently. When she forgot one, she improvised, making the audience laugh. This was a child who knew she was loved, protected, believed. After the play, parents flooded the hallway, congratulating their kids, taking pictures. Reaper hung back, waiting. Then he saw her, Lily, still in costume, scanning the crowd with purpose. When she spotted him, her face lit up. She ran to him, princess dress flying, and crashed into him with a hug that nearly knocked the wind out of him. You came, she squealed. Mom said you probably couldn't make it. but I knew you would. Wouldn't miss it, Reaper said, his voice rough. You were amazing up there. Sarah approached, and she didn't flinch from him anymore. She smiled. Thank you for coming. It means the world to her. To me too, he admitted. Sarah looked different, confident, settled. She'd gotten her own apartment, a better job, started going back to school at night. The last Reaper had heard, David Morrison had taken a plea deal for assault and harassment. 2 years probation, anger management classes, a permanent restraining order. Not enough, in Reaper's opinion, but enough to keep him away. We're going for ice cream after this, Sarah said. Would you like to join us? Reaper hesitated. He had a club meeting in an hour, a ride planned for tomorrow. The life of a biker wasn't meant for school plays and ice cream parlors. But Lily looked up at him with such hope, such trust, and he remembered standing in the rain that night, feeling the weight of second chances. Yeah, he said, I'd like that. They walked out together. A single mother, a little girl, and a biker named Reaper who'd learned that sometimes the strongest men were the ones who knew how to be gentle. Behind them, the Iron Cross MC waited in the parking lot, 7 bikes glinting in the afternoon sun. When Lily waved at them, they waved back. In the ice cream parlor, Lily ordered chocolate with sprinkles and told Reaper about school, about her new friends, about the soccer team she'd joined. Sarah added details, smiling, occasionally touching her daughter's shoulder in that way mothers do when they're grateful just to have their child beside them. Do you ever think about that night? Lily asked suddenly. The rain night. Reaper nodded. Every day. Me too, she said. I was so scared. But you listened. You were brave enough to speak. Lily considered this, swirling her spoon through melting ice cream. Mom says you saved us, but I think we saved each other. Reaper felt his throat tighten, out of the mouths of babes. You're probably right, he said. Later, as they said goodbye in the parking lot, Lily hugged him again. Same time next month? She asked. They'd started this tradition, monthly check-ins, sometimes just coffee with Sarah, sometimes outings like this. Small moments that added up to something like family. Same time, Reaper confirmed. He rode back to the clubhouse alone, taking the long way, thinking about Emily, the daughter he'd lost, and Lily, the child who'd found him. The rain started up again, soft and gentle this time, washing the dust from his bike and the world around him. At a red light, he pulled out his phone and sent a text to Gunnar. Tell the boys they did good. That little girl's thriving. The response came quick. We all did good, brother. See you at church. Church, that's what they called club meetings. A place for confession, for brotherhood, for men who'd lived hard trying to live better. Reaper thought about that word as he rode. Church. Sanctuary. Redemption. Maybe that's what they'd built that rainy night. Not just safety for one child, but proof that broken men could still do holy work. That the world hadn't stopped needing heroes. It had just stopped looking in the right places. He pulled into the clubhouse parking lot as the sun broke through the clouds, painting everything gold. His brothers were already there, bikes lined up like soldiers, waiting. Reaper climbed off his Harley and looked at them. These men society had written off as thugs and criminals. These men who dropped everything to help a child in the rain. These men who understood that real strength wasn't about intimidation or violence, but about standing between innocence and harm. Boys, he said, voice carrying across the lot. Let me tell you about second chances. And as the sun set and the rain finally stopped, Reaper told them about Lily's play, about ice cream and promises kept, about how sometimes the smallest voice finds the strongest heart, about how sometimes the rain doesn't wash things away. Sometimes it brings exactly the right people together. 15 years ago, Reaper lost his daughter to a rainy night and bad timing. 2 years ago, a little girl in the rain gave him back his heart. Some people believe in fate. Reaper believes in showing up, in listening when everyone else looks away, in being the person you needed when you were afraid. The Iron Cross MC still rides every Saturday. They still gather at Murphy's Diner. And if you look closely at Reaper's left hand, you'll see 2 rings on a chain around his neck. One for Emily, who taught him what it meant to be a father. One from Lily, a plastic princess ring from a school play, reminding him what it means to be a hero. Not all angels have wings. Sometimes they have engines.